Alright, welcome to the afternoon part of the lecture. Very unfortunate, our recording has been corrupted, so I'm re-recording this. So, shout out to the one guy who is probably watching this video right now. So, what we covered in the afternoon was that we covered this thing called server-side exploits. Okay, so let us quickly dive into it. So, just now, you were listening, or maybe you were in the morning session, we were talking about how you, as the attacker here, can go using the server to attack other the same service. So this will come in form of your XSS, where you were trying to compromise the admin, making him do stuff that he was never intending to do, right? Like for example, uh if you manage to do XSS 7, he you basically get his cookies and steal his credential, pose as him on the internet. That's not very good, obviously. But now we'll be focusing on the more internal stuff, where you go from the server to its related components, right? Like for example, their database or their internal API or even their own file system. So this is what our targets will be for this afternoon session. So let's start off with something simple, right? Let's look at this thing called directory traversal. So I have a primer that's available on CTFD. Go and take a look. It's called directory traversal, and it's just a simple notes app. And just give yourself like 5 minutes or 10 minutes to just take a look at the code. Maybe if you know the exploit, good for you. Go and get your free flag. I'm gonna wait right here for 5 seconds. Hopefully you can pause the video and go and check it out. Alright, so welcome back. I hope you have some idea of what you have done. So let us take a look straight at the code. So if you take a look at the code over here, yep, okay, you'll see that I basically take a look at your file. So I get your arguments and I check for your file, and then afterwards I'll just send you the file itself, right? I'll just give you your welcome.txt, or if you were astute enough, you'll notice meshare.txt or secretnote.txt, which is really not that secret. What happens is that this resolve thing is really dangerous, and let me explain why. So if you were to recall from like 2 days ago, or at this point a week, there will be these special characters that show different things about your file path, right? So in Linux, dot dot slash will indicate the parent folder. Your dot slash will be the current folder you're in. Tilde slash will indicate your home folder, which is typically where you will see your desktop, your documents, your downloads. They're all under there. And lastly, you have your root folder, which is basically the entire computer. So it will look something like this. So we are currently in the notes app, the notes folder, right, with all your welcome.txt and whatever not. And flag exists here at root. So home will be, as I said, those are your desktop folders are. So this is like where it will be. It will typically point straight to yourself. So if it was me, Halogen, it will be this specific folder. And if you use dot dot slash, you'll go up one. So notes dot slash will give it itself. Dot dot slash will give it the parent folder, which is app. And you can keep chaining them. You can keep going dot dot slash, dot dot slash, dot dot slash, dot dot slash, all the way to the top of your file. So this entire thing is called a file tree, like TREE. So with this knowledge, I'm sure you can basically see where I'm going with this, right? Just travel up the tree and you'll get your flag. So it'll look something like this. So let's say I run the code right now. Okay, you go take a look. You're running. Yep. Now you can see that it shows me my notes app, which is nothing. And if I were to go and look at uh, file equal to meshare.txt, you get meshare. Wow, shocking. But what you can also do is you can use dot dot slash 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 dot dot slash. It doesn't matter how many you use, because if you dot dot slash on your root directory here, it will loop back onto itself. So dot dot slash and root would loop back onto root itself. So you can basically keep chaining this, even though you should not put this many. I'm just gonna show for example purposes. And you can go flag.txt and you should get your file. Okay, wait, I just realized that it's here. Oops. But yeah, what you have to do is just do that and it will basically work on your server. Moving on, now you should be taking a look at this, right? Can I do this on the browser itself, where I just dot dot slash in the URL? Does that work? Well, if you realize it really doesn't, because the browser will resolve it for you, and this means and it will resolve it taking the domain as the root. So it will be chels.iYCEP.blahaj.sg. It will resolve it to itself. It will not actually resolve it to, the root folder, because that's just stupid, right? It's too dangerous. So it will resolve that, and then you just try and get the file, but the file doesn't exist, so it just dies. Fall for no file. Okay, now let's move on to level one, the photo finish. So now I want you to go and fetch me flag.txt again, but this forcing you to use a PNG. I want images. How do you bypass this filter? So I'm gonna give you 15 minutes. Go and think about it for a bit. You know, I'll wait here, and then you should pause the video. Okay, so that was about. Hopefully you have taken a look at the code. Let me go and pull up my version of it so that you can take a look. So you can see that it's basically the same thing, except now I make sure that PNG is in the path, and it's still the same vulnerability. You can see straight up this line here, this specific part that I've highlighted, is definitely dangerous, right? But how do I get rid of this .png? Well, let us take a look at the website itself then. So I've quickly paused the recording to rerun the server so that we have this new thing. And let's go and take a look. So now we have Color Vault, where you can take a look at colors. Wow, very nice, very nice. But what do I do if I want the PNG, right? Some of you might think, why can I not just do dot dot slash dot slash dot dot slash flag.txt, right? Oh, shit, only PNG files are allowed. What can we do? Well, some of you might realize that if I was resolving, right, why can't I just make a fake directory and then exit it instantly? So that's quite impressive, right? Why can't I? That, no one would have thought to do that. And because you resolve it, it will actually remove that directory from the file path. And this extra dot dots will also go and resolve with the folders that you're in. So this fake directory just completely disappears. Who could have thought of that? So if you do that, let me just show you. So if you do a fake fake dot png slash dot dot slash, wow, you get the flag. That's crazy. So why does that? So okay, well, I mean, it's quite obvious. We're supposed to stop it, right? Well, it's very simple. You just need to resolve it before you take a look at it. So here, I resolved it before I did my check. This check is a more what do you call it? It's a more uh general check where it makes sure that your image stays within the folder, or your file stays within that folder. So it stays relative to or within the base directory, which I have defined here to be /app/data. Hope if you should try it out on your own, right? see whether you can patch this error by looking at your, let's say, mm, looking at level 1. If you can change the code to do this instead, it will not be vulnerable anymore. So if I just swap this direction, so if I did this and I here instead, before I run it here, before I did my check, well, the PNG file directory wouldn't exist anymore and it would just be gone. Wow, so shocking. Okay, now let's go on to our second exploit, second type of exploit, which is called template injection. So most HTML files on the web, right? They It's very hard to code very dynamic apps, right? What they usually do is they'll have this thing called a template file, which is a HTML file that will contain code, and this code is run through a renderer to give you a pure HTML file. So for Flask, which is the service that we're using, you will have your Python functions, which will call template files, and you know your renderer, which is called Jinja. And what Jinja does is it will look for Python code like template markers, and you execute the Python code to give you a rendered HTML file, which is just pure HTML, and it sends that to your server. So if you take a look at our code here, this is your Python function. This is your template file. It's just a simple HTML file. And this is function indicates that this file should be passed into Jinja to be rendered. So specifically for Jinja, the marker is double curly brace, and that will allow it to run Python files. Python code, sorry. So with this knowledge, let's try and see whether you can run Python code on this specific server. So I have pushed up this challenge called template injection dash greeter. So just pause the video here. I'll see you again in hopefully 5 to 10 minutes. Okay. I hope that was enough time. Welcome back. So let us take a look at what is happening on Primer. So first I'm gonna open up the code here. You can see that there's a um very special function here called render string template. I think most of you would realize that this is actually kind of dangerous, isn't it? Like, look, I'm basically inputting HTML code straight into Jinja. So isn't that just, can't I just inject my own like double curly brace and it'll just get rendered on the server because Jinja will see it and it'll run it and it'll output it? Well, you can. So let me just run the server, which okay, I have it already. Very nice. So here's greeter, right? You see that I will basically get my string back. But what if I did this? Wow, shocking. I have managed to calculate 7 times 7 on this app here. I mean, if I change it to a string, you would expect it to be 7 sevens, which it is, shockingly. So that is quite dangerous, but what can we do with that? Right? It's just running code, right? What can we do? What can we do? But it's still sandboxed, right? We don't have access to our favorite OS or any other Python libraries, right? So that's quite dangerous. That's quite unfortunate. But there is a way to get OS onto the server. First of all, did you know that Python has this thing called introspection and specifically double underscore or dunder attributes? These dunder attributes basically give you access into Python's internal code. So for example, if I have a string, okay, let's show you some examples. If I have a string and then I do dot dot underscore underscore class, I get the string class. I don't get the string. I get something that encapsulates every single type of string. Gives me MRO will give me all the parent classes. So everything that string uses to define itself, I can get it. So if I were to chain that with MRO, I'll get string and object because string is an object, so of course it will use the object type as well. After that, there's also subclasses and modules. Well, subclasses I think is very important because what we can do is we can basically dot underscore subclasses. Okay, wait, let me get the object item instead. See, now I get object, and then I can get my subclasses. Oh, it's a method, my bad. So I have to call subclasses, and I basically get every single type of function that exists on Python is import functions. So I can get built-ins, I can get globals, I can get import. Well, I think it's quite clear that if I were to get the import function, I can import anything I want in Python, and that just doesn't sound good for the server because I'm not supposed to do that, right? I'm just supposed to put my name in. So as I showed just now, here we can chain them. So you can get the subclasses of this object, which is basically a part of every single Python object ever. And with that, we are basically, just import, just get the whole universe of Python. Now, what do? We have to find our entry. So there's two ways to obtain command execution. One of them is to use the built-in library. So the built-in import library, sorry. So you basically find like a class, like a built-in importer or something, just import the thing. Another thing you can do is to find a command execution library, like subprocess.popen. You just use that class and basically run your own code. So over here, I've only managed to find built-in importer. So this is the payload. Shockingly, is at 130. So it's the 131st entry. So I've done all the hard work for you. I've scoured through the entire list and I found that 130 gives you built-in importer, which is great. So now with built-in importer, we can basically import whatever we want, right? So just import OS and we can run commands because OS has this function called popen that allows you to run commands and get the result. So you can see that if I were to what do you call it? Dot load module ls dot read sorry dot load module os, sorry, I have to import os, then I run popen to run my command ls, which will read the directory, read all the files in the directory, and then I will read the output, and wow, I get my things. I get my app.py, I get my all my setup files, and I even get my template folder. That's crazy. So this is what stems from just using this one simple line. So now let's move on to the next level. What if I filter it, right? Say you can't use quotes anymore. I say you can't use a dot anymore. So what will you do? Just pause the video here. We're going to take a look at the what do you call it? The challenge, which is on CTFD, is template injection dash. Pro Max is for those who are like who thinks it's too easy. Okay, so you just pause the video, take about 15 minutes, and I'll give you some hints as well along the way if you need them. So yeah, see you later. Okay, hello, welcome back. So if you do need a hint, I'm gonna give you one right now. So the first hint that I can give you is the dot alternative. So what we can do is we can use this special operator called the pipe operator. This only works on Jinja. What it allows me to do is it allows me to access the attributes of the object, or you want to call it member or whatever. But essentially, I can replace my dot. So you should pause the video now. Maybe you will have some insights in the future. I have more hints. Well, one more hint only. So if you need it, just unpause the video and I'll give it back to you. Alright, hello. If you still need the second hint, here it is. Now I can replace quotes as well. So what happens is I define a dictionary, and each of these variables of the dictionary, I can join them together with this pipe operator and this join here. What this does is it will give me uh sorry, what was I gonna say? Ah yes. It will give me the whole it will give me the variable. So this is very helpful, you know. Now you can use both your dot replacement and your string replacement to basically get the same payload as just now. Um, just pause the video. Maybe now you'll be able to solve it. Alright, welcome back. So now if you still cannot solve it, it's okay. After all, this is not meant to be an easy module, easy topic. So let me just quickly show you how I would have done it. Okay. Oops. So I've got my code here. I'm running it, and I have this char blacklist, which basically blocks my dot, my quotes. So what can I do? Let's take a look. So once again, we're on greeter, but this time round, if I were to put in a single quote, I get no hacking. That's very unfortunate. But what I can do is that I can take a look at my previous payload. Okay, so my previous payload was this, correct? So let's see, how can I replace all of this? All of my dots should be replaced with this. Correct, 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 correct. And then I call this, so I wrap brackets around it, just, it will be a bit messy, but if you stay calm, really properly go and do it. So I'm gonna sort it a little nicer, just a little, so you can see what's happening. So I'm gonna call that, and then you get more attributes of this. I call this, so you can see it will get complex very, very quickly, but all in the name of getting an exploit, right? So then I do it again. After I get OS, I use my attribute to get this, and then I call it, and I use my attribute to get my last item, which is read, and wow, shocking, it works now. Okay, now I have replaced all of my dots. Next, I need to replace all of my strings. What I'll do is I will wrap it around, equal to 1, join it, correct? Because what I did was I basically used the string trick to replace all of my strings with dictionary variables instead. Same here with my OS. Unfortunately, I will need to also do that as well. So I do this, and then I will get my OS variable like so, and my ls variable like so. So if it all goes right, this should be my full payload. And wow, it just works. So you can see that it's not really that deep. Well, all I need to do was just take the previous payload, apply all the tricks that I showed you just now in the hints, and boom, it just works. And for those who are wondering, the actual solution, you change your command here. So this is the payload. Right. Very cool stuff, right? You're able to bypass everything. So I think it goes to say that it's quite obvious you can't really restrict Python, right? Python, you can't sandbox. There's so many features, so many libraries, so many variables, right? If you block, like maybe let's say class, there's always a way to get another way, another Python introspection, other paths, right? Like you could use the constructor, you could use the global variables. I'm saying words, but essentially there's just so many ways to do it. So the best way to mitigate is really just to never use render string template, because that opens the door up for injection straight into the template file, which is something that you do not want to do. So what you should do instead is do render template and use your files and you put your name here instead. You pass your user string inputs as arguments, not as templates. So what happens is that it will become arguments to the renderer. It will become arguments to Jinja. It won't be straight into the template file itself. This is different because now Jinja will treat this open your template markers, your open curly braces as um as strings instead of as your templates. And because of that, it'll just be a string. And you just see it back returned to you as your name. Alright, let's go on to our last topic of the day, which is race condition. Okay, so let's take a look at the network again, right? Specifically, let's take a look at this server and its components, but mostly the server, right? Where you, as the attacker, you send a request. The server runs some Python function or whatever, and it gives you a response. Wow, shocking. So if I send multiple requests, it'll look like this, right? I give it my request, it processes, and it gives me the response. And I send another request, it processes, and it gives me a response. Some people might notice that, well, my Valorant games don't work like that. There's multiple people sending requests at the same time, right? There's no way that I'm sending requests and that it's just the server is just waiting for me to move before, right? That just doesn't work. So what happens actually, it will look like this instead, where you have multiple requests happening at the same time and multiple processes running at the same time and multiple responses being returned at the same time. So there is a bit of overlapping. And this is a bit dangerous, but typically it won't pose too much of a threat unless, you didn't handle it properly. So specifically, what happens when it overlaps is that it's still a computer, right? There's no way stuff can happen concurrently. What happens is that it will break it up into small chunks like this, where you will basically have half the process run as such. This is especially true in Python because it is single threaded, which means that only one process can be running at any time. Well, up until the most recent Python 3.14. But either ways, this is how you should envision processes working, where literally anything can happen from concurrent processes before you run any step in your function. So if you can handle this well, that's good. You get very fast response times because your server is able to process many things at the same time. But if you don't handle it well, it could be a very big disaster. So let's take a look at a primer, right? The primer for this specific concept. So I've opened a challenge on CTFD where you can take a look at it. It's called race condition dash primer. So just pause the video and really go and take a look at it. See what's the issue, where's the overlap, and what you can do to bypass it. Alright? So I hope you are ready and to take a look at it with me. So if you are very lucky and you manage to guess one of the passwords, good for you. But you should probably learn how to do it properly. So the exploit looks something like this. So this is my login function, right? The login function, what happens is that it checks for the number of tries, then it gets my password, then it checks for my password, then it tries again, then minus my tries, and then it will tell me how many tries I've left. So something very interesting you should take note is that I actually subtract my tries before I do my string check. Sorry, after I do my string check. So it will look something like this, where I do my check before I update my account. What if I spam checks? Multiple checks at the same time. Doesn't sound very good. And it isn't, because I can basically bypass this try slash that equal to 0 because it hasn't even updated yet. It's still checking, right? I check my first password, I check my second password, I check my third password. The count still hasn't updated. And if any one of them is correct, I just cut through all of it and I get the flag. Wow. So that's a very bad handling of the situation. If you want to mitigate this, right, obviously you could just take S tries, right? You bring it up to the top. So now I subtract my tries before I even do my string check. But even then, it's still a little iffy because you can still have multiple requests coming at the same time. Okay, so how the exploit will look like is that first of all, I have to import this thing called import thread pool executor. What it does is basically it allows me to send everything at one go instead of waiting for the response from the previous one. So if you go back here, right, I don't want this to happen, right? This means that my count will happen before I do my next check. So I need to have them all happening at the same time like this. And from here, sorry, yep. From here, I basically do a login attempt on all the passwords. And down here is thread pool executor. And what this does is that it will basically prepare all of them as one like single asynchronous request pool. Okay, that was a lot of big words, I just realized. It's basically just saying that these are all functions that, and I'm gonna not wait for the response. I'm just gonna throw it away, let them do its own thing, and if it comes back, it comes back, right? So this is how it will look like. Let me show you how it looks like in practice. So here's the server code. What I'm going to do is I'm gonna get the solution over here. So I have it running on port 5000 right now, and I basically I get the session so that I don't lose my number of tries, because if you look over here, if I do not have a session, they'll give me one and they'll randomly choose a different password. So I want it to be the same password so that I can actually guess it, you know. So this is what the session does. And I send it as a cookie. If you should recall, like cookies are what proves me. So your sorry, what do you call it? So this so if you want to like reset your session, like you know, basically get a different password, you just remove your cookies and you know it will work. So how this looks like, let me just quickly run it. Oh, it's not there. Wait, give me. Okay, hopefully that was not too long. So now I have the passwords.txt, which is also given to you if you check your distribution. And I'm just gonna run it. Okay, another cut had to happen, unfortunately, but I should be able to get it now. What? Okay, hopefully it's the final cut. Okay. Oops, no way. So I get the flag. I can see that for every single wrong password that I insert, right? Okay, let me show you some more. Yep. Basically got into the negative tries because it didn't manage to check properly, right? My count is updated after my check. So one of them returns the correct password, and the others will just subtract it afterwards later, right? So this is how it will look like. So with that knowledge, let's go on to our level one. Our level one, which is on promo codes. Okay. So you can see that our flag is on the site, but it's worth $1,000. And we have a few promo codes that I can use, and but only one of them works, and I only let you use it once. So how do you use it multiple times? I'm sure you can figure it out. So 5 seconds, just think about it. If you need to pause the video. You should probably go to the previous slide, this slide, which will which you can use to adapt into your promo code solution. Okay, so hopefully you're able to take a look at the challenge. Okay, hello, welcome back. So let us now see how we are supposed to solve this, right? So over here, if you can't tell, the idea is to use the promo code, but you don't know which promo code is being used. So what you do is you put all five and then just like spam, and it will just work. So let me just quickly run the server, okay, and then I'll run this solve script specifically. So what it does is that it gets a session, it calls this to get a session first, because if I don't do it, each of these promo codes will be different and it will just completely break everything. Afterwards, I'll get I'll put in my code, which is, well, I mean, it's still password, right? And then what happens is that I will have my all this. The new thing is that afterwards I will buy the flag after it all, because after all this comes back, then I'll buy the flag. So let's run it and take a look. So if you can see, there's a shit ton of invalid promo codes, but if it does work, you see that it will decrease my flag cost by a bit, decrease my flag, so on and 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 so on, all the way until I eventually get the flag cost to be negative 250, and it gives me the flag afterwards when I buy it. See, not that bad. So the exploit looks something like this. It's just using the promo code again and again. But how do we mitigate this, right? This seems like a very dangerous thing to allow. Well, there's this thing called the atomic function, right? Blah 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 blah. I got this. Oh, it's an AI generated definition from systems architecture from 2021. Who cares, right? But TL atomic means singular or uncuttable in Greek, which means that these functions must either run fully or never run at all. So if we go back to our example here, basically it will force our to not be overlapping. So it will go from this to this. And you can enforce that with this thing called a lock. So a lock makes sure that when the process is running, it has a lock. And any other request that comes in will have to respect this lock and wait for it to unlock before you can do it, which is with lock. So this with lock means that you need to do it with the lock. If you don't have the lock, you wait until you have the lock before you can run once dot dot dot. Alright, doesn't seem too bad. So hopefully you managed to learn something today. Here's our feedback form. And please do scan the QR code and give us feedback so that we can improve on our sessions in the future. All of my challenges are already up on CTFD, so you can try it out. As well, on top of that, there's also a level 2 for template injection as well as directory traversal. Not directory traversal, for template injection and for race condition. For these two, do go on and just take a look. See how it try it out. I'm sure with enough time you'll be able to do web exploitation just as well as all the trainers. Thank you and bye bye.